Today I'm going to tell you 3 stories about Brea's water, where part of it comes from, how part of it was used, and how we once got rid of part of it, the part we didn't want. To begin with, I'm here at the Brea Maintenance Yard on Berry Street. And see this huge metal roof? Got any idea what's underneath it? Well, let me tell you. It's a 30 million gallon water reservoir. And did you know that it's so large that it comes under the jurisdiction of the State Division of Dams? It began pumping water into Brea's pipes in 1976, but its story began more than 50 years earlier when it wasn't a water reservoir at all, but one that held oil. It was just one of several large tanks that were part of Union Oil's Stewart Tank Farm, which also included a refinery built in 1912 employing several local men. Everything changed here, though, on the morning of April 9th, 1926, when a huge bolt of lightning came out of the sky, hit 2 of the reservoirs, starting a massive blaze which caused all sorts of damage, both to the tank farm and to the surrounding fruit and walnut orchards. The fire kept burning for almost a week, attracting sightseers from all over Southern California, and even causing a small cyclone which roared through town, ripping the roof off a home that once stood on the corner of Madrona and Imperial Highway. This reservoir, though, was one that wasn't damaged, and in 1968, Union Oil sold it to the city of Brea, which finally began in the mid-1970s to turn it into a place to store water. There was plenty to do, too, because the tank was in pretty bad shape. The old roof, which had to be replaced, is now 26 feet above the level of the floor, and the floor itself is nearly 250,000 square feet, making it a lot larger than a football field. In fact, inside it kind of looks like the interior of a big stadium. In October 1976, the reservoir was finally finished and then formally dedicated in a short ceremony at the site, which included as guest speaker U.S. Senator Charles Wiggins, who 2 years earlier had played a major role in the Watergate investigation. It had been a lot of work, and there had been a lot of money spent, but Brea in the 1970s needed to look to the future and a population about to skyrocket with the building of the Brea Mall. My next story begins when the only people who lived up in these hills were the Indians, who hunted, lived in their wickiups, and gathered acorns and other seeds for food. So what does that have to do with water? Well, those same Indians probably knew about this place, a natural hot springs up in Carbon Canyon, which probably looked a lot different back then because it was just one big mud puddle. Years later, though, it was a surprised oil driller here who first tapped into its warm artesian waters. And what became of that? Levita Hot Springs. At first, the springs consisted of simple wooden barrels sunk into the ground, but then in the 1920s, a real bathhouse was built alongside the road, attracting visitors from all over the area. There was even a full-scale bottling plant here, which used the water to make this, a soft drink called Lime and Lemon. In 1937, though, the plant was moved into a part of the old Oilfields National Bank building on Brea Boulevard, where full-scale operations continued for a couple of years before moving on to Los Angeles. Even our Brea sign got into the act when it advertised the grand opening. Back at the spa, though, things were changing. Over the years, a real hotel was built with nice, comfortable rooms for visitors, and they even had television sets. People could also enjoy one of the 2 pools on the property or just relax for a while in one of the individual soaking tubs. Afterwards, a rest or a massage might sound appealing before walking the short distance to the Levita Cafe and having a good, leisurely meal in the dining room. Times changed, though, and so do people's taste, and gradually fewer and fewer people were coming here. And then, in the late 1980s, a fire that began in the basement and spread throughout the interior of the hotel pretty much spelled the end of the spa. The cafe did stay open for many years and became popular with motorcyclists who would gather here on the weekends. Recently, it too closed and was demolished, along with anything else that still remained of Levita. So only that tank over there and the original spring remain from a time when Levita was not only a popular destination, but also a local landmark. Okay, so I've already told you where our water comes from and what was done with it, but now it's time to tell you how we once got rid of it, at least part of it. Up until 1918, it was legal to have outhouses in town, and then new laws were passed, and Brea needed a better way to dispose of what it didn't want. So in 1925, we took a giant step forward. and actually built a state-of-the-art sewage disposal plant right beside Brea Creek. In fact, I'm standing just about where I once stood, which is almost on the second hole of the Brea Golf Course. For 30 years, the plant did its thing here, cleaning the water and doing it well too. But by the early 50s, our population had increased so much the plant just couldn't handle the extra load. Something needed to be done, and the problem was finally solved when Brea was connected to the main Fullerton sewer line. Our little plant was then torn down, and no trace of it still remains. And very few people will even remember that it once existed, but now you do. Not that it's that important, but it is a part of Brea history. So for this Did You Know segment of Video Brea Line, I'm Brian Saul.